So there's a new video game being released about Fallujah in Iraq. Okay. And I want to show this to you. This is from IGN, right? So get your first official look at gameplay from 6 Days in Fallujah, the tactical first-person shooter based on the real-life second battle for Fallujah in the Iraq War. Wow. I mean, I don't need to show you the comments, although I will, for anyone to see how distasteful that is, to say the least. Distasteful is an understatement. I mean, some people were asking, do you get to play as the good guys, or are you forced to play as the Americans? That was a bloodbath, what happened in Fallujah, right? So there were two battles of Fallujah, if I recall well. And what they did to that city, I mean, is one of the biggest war crimes in modern history. Truly. That's not an exaggeration. And I talked to you about this the other day when I did this big video on the Iraq War. If you have not seen it, please go watch it. It's a long video. It's a long war. So, you know, it doesn't even begin to cover everything that happened. But we talked about it in there. And I mean, you know, Fallujah, it's called the city of mosques, right? It's beautiful. It's renowned. It's famous for having so many mosques, for, you know, this skyline, if you will, of minarets. It's destroyed. It turned to rubble, turned to dust, you know, and it's not just about buildings, because that's tragic enough. That's heartbreaking enough to lose your history and your culture, which is a war crime. But on top of it, the human cost. And particularly with Fallujah, you had the Americans using white phosphorus, which is a chemical weapon, right, which is banned. And they were also using depleted uranium, right? So again, the point behind that is that when you fire RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades, or use tank shells, particularly AP, so armor-piercing rounds, the depleted uranium makes the armor-piercing rounds more effective, okay? And I don't even understand the premise of this, because, I mean, I talked to Scott Ritter the other day, right, who's a former chief weapons inspector for the UN from 1991 to 98 in Iraq, and he was also in the Marines, and he fought in the first Gulf War, and he was extremely opposed to the invasion in 2002. He knew there were no weapons of mass destruction. I mean, if anyone knows, it's him, right? His job was to get rid of them, and he goes up against Biden in the Senate. And you know, he was trying to warn people, and he told me in the interview, I'll have the full one up shortly, that, you know, when the US and the UK invaded Iraq in 2003, there was no army there. It was a paper tiger, okay? So I'm just confused why. I mean, the whole invasion is wrong to begin with, but it just goes to show you how messed up it is that they're not even meeting a real conventional armed force, and they're still using depleted uranium in the weapons because it's supposedly more effective. Effective against what? You're the United States Army. What are you exactly afraid of here that you have to use depleted uranium? Because right now to this day, you have birth defects in Fallujah. Because of, I don't know if this is just the depleted uranium. It's probably the white phosphorus. It's a whole mix of things. This is just what we know also, right? But this is scientifically documented that you have a higher mortality rate, infant mortality rate, and rate of birth defects in Fallujah. It's worse than Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where they drop fucking nukes. Okay? That's not me saying that. That's the science, right? And again, let's be very clear. I don't care if there was no depleted uranium in the shells. Shouldn't be there in the first place, right? Shouldn't be there in the first place. But it's just to give you an idea of how messed up, how horrific this war was and still is. Because it's not over, right? Iraq is still under occupation. Iraq has still not been rebuilt. The Iraqi people have still not recovered. And, you know, I just want to show you this, for example, over here. Just give me 1 second, if you will. This is from The Guardian. This is from October 2012. The victims of Fallujah's health crisis are stifled by Western silence. Okay? So 4 new studies on the health crisis in Fallujah have been published in the last 3 months. Okay? Yet one of the most severe public health crises in history, for which the US military may be to blame, receives no attention in the United States. Ever since 2 major US-led assaults destroyed the Iraqi city of Fallujah in 2004, Fallujahans have witnessed dramatic increases in rates of cancers, birth defects, and infant mortality in their city. Dr. Chris Busby, the author and co-author of 2 studies on the Fallujah health crisis, has called this the highest rate of genetic damage in any population ever studied. Horrific. It's horrific. And, you know, this is not just, it's not just about the birth defects, although there is an account on Twitter. And again, if you have a weak stomach, I apologize for the transition. I need to get rid of that one because we're not covering Biden now. But there's an account on Twitter about Fallujah defects. I think it's called F Defects, @FDefects, and they just post pictures of the babies that are born there. And it is, I could not look at more than one. I mean, again, this is evil. It's not war crimes. It's evil. What has happened to Iraq, and it's heartbreaking. And it's not just that, right? You have to understand that the war crimes that were committed there, it's way worse than that. Let me just play you this clip of Noam Chomsky. Okay, this was posted by Maria on Twitter. Right, let me play you this clip. He talks about Fallujah.
Of the 21st. Fallujah, first of all, was one of the worst atrocities of the 21st century. The Iraq War itself was the worst crime of the 21st century, easily. Fallujah was probably the worst war crime carried out during that war. The Marines, 7,000 Marines, attacked Fallujah, probably killed everyone who was there. They called them insurgents, but whatever that means. The first day of the invasion of Fallujah, you take a look at the New York Times, had a front page photograph of Marines breaking into the General Hospital, which is a war crime, throwing all the patients on the floor and shackling them, throwing the doctors on the floor. It was hailed as a triumph. Yeah. When the high command was asked why they broke into the hospital, they had an explanation. They said it was a propaganda center for the insurgents. It was releasing casualty figures, and therefore it's legitimate to carry out a major war crime. Apparently pretty exotic weapons were used there, and there's evidence, which international agencies don't want to look at, of high levels of cancer, other effects of maybe depleted uranium, maybe something else. It's a major atrocity. But it's hailed here as a victory. The only way it is referred to now is as a tragedy, because the Marines fought so hard to liberate Fallujah, and now ISIS is in control of it. I mean, you don't know what to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. You know, once again, I've never been to Iraq. I've never been to Fallujah, and this just breaks my heart. And, you know, it's not just that. I've also posted about this on Twitter before. And there's also a massacre, one of many massacres, but this one is well documented, where you had people protesting. They wanted the Americans to fuck off. And again, it's so ironic, right? How they were allegedly invaded Iraq to bring democracy, but yet if you assemble and you express, you know, your opinion, you protest, you get shot at. Some democracy, right? So let me read you what happened. Okay. This report was it's compiled by Human Rights Watch. Now I know that they're pushing a lot of the they just released one saying Putin is starving Syria. That's an interesting one, but nonetheless, I mean, this is pretty well documented, not just by them, but this is the one that happens to be that I happen to have open here, and this happened in April 2003. Okay, so This paragraph is quoting from that report, and they're saying that in April 2003, United States Army soldiers from the American 1st Battalion of the 82nd Airborne fired into a crowd of Iraqi civilians who were protesting their presence at a school within the city of Fallujah. The soldiers claimed they were receiving fire from the crowd, whereas the civilians said they were shot at first. Human Rights Watch, which inspected the area after the incident, found no physical evidence of shots fired at the building where U.S. forces were based. So yeah, I've read the report, and you know the Americans are saying, oh, we were shot at. Yeah, the problem is there are no bullet holes where they were standing. All the bullet holes are where the Iraqis were standing, and they even use a fucking 50 caliber, right? You know how big a 50 caliber bullet is? Big motherfucker like this. I mean, if you fire a 50 caliber with a sniper, it doesn't have to touch you. The shockwave will just rip your arm off, even if it passes right by. Yeah, I mean, and we're talking about a machine gun, right? These are civilians. They tried to cover up a fucking war crime, a massacre, a bloodbath. It's not the first time they tried to do the same thing in Haditha, right? And Mahmoudiyah, always. Look at the casualties, man. 20 dead, 70 plus injured. I mean, that's horrendous. And what it says here, three U.S. Army soldiers injured. And then if I recall correctly, they did another one just a few days later. There you go. See, here it is. 2 days later, on April 30th, 82nd Airborne was replaced in the city by the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment. Okay? However, on the same day, 3 more unarmed civilians were killed by the United States soldiers during a daytime protest in front of the Baas Party headquarters and mayor's office. Once again, the U.S. suffered no casualties from the incident, but some U.S. soldiers were hurt in a retaliatory grenade attack on the Baas headquarters later that evening. I mean, I'm just trying to point out to you how much the city has been through. This is microscopic. I mean, these things that I've just shown you, it's not even 1/10 of 1% of what happened in Fallujah, right? I don't think we'll ever know because, you know, a lot of these war crimes were covered up. As you can see here, they tried, and in other instances they tried. What about the other ones that we'll never know about because they successfully covered them up? Right? And it's not just that. I mean, of course, ISIS came in and occupied it afterwards. And I mean, that's a direct result of the war, right? So Iraqis, they've been through the invasion, right? And then the months after the invasion and, you know, the so-called insurgency, as they say, it's a resistance. You know, when you invade a country, people are going to get pissed off, especially when you're massacring them. And then, of course, you had, you know, the sectarian war. But again, I think this is completely fueled by the United States. They know exactly what the fuck they're doing. They preyed on this on purpose to just further destabilize the country and shirk responsibility for what they did. And not just the United States, UK as well, of course. And then, of course, you had ISIS, right? You had Al-Qaeda. And then after that, ISIS. I mean, I can't even imagine what the Iraqis have been through, right? 18 years later, their country still does not know peace. And look at Afghanistan. 20 years later, their country still does not know peace. They barely even recovered from the Soviets. And then, you know, America. It's heartbreaking. And so going back to the original story here about this video game that they're making. I mean, look, dude. Hold on. I'm trying to open it up for you, although I'm scared to click play because of the copyright issues, right? So, I mean, look, let's be clear. I got a Battlefield poster up there. I mean, I have the whole collection. I've been playing it since I was a kid. Medal of Honor, the old ones, not, you know, this new crap. You know, I Call of Duty, okay, but you know, at least in Battlefield Vietnam, you could play as the Vietnamese. Yeah, right. You can go, you can go and start playing as the Vietnamese, right? What is this? A reenactment of a bloodbath? Could you imagine if someone made a game about like 9/11 where you fly the planes into the towers? Could you imagine how outraged Americans would be? By the way, Danny Haifong, who I've had on the show, and Roberto Servent, right? They wrote this book, American Exceptionalism. And the first thing in the book that they talk about is how there was a movie being released in Australia, And the poster for the movie was someone jumping out of a building on fire. And the release date was 9/11. And it had nothing to do with 9/11. It was just the poster was someone jumping out of a window on fire. And this is in Australia. And they had to get rid of it and change it because, you know, the whole world has to come to a standstill and mourn 9/11. Who mourns for the Iraqis? Who mourns for the Afghans? Who mourns for the Syrians, the Libyans, the Somalians? Huh? Who mourns for them? Right? You know, you can't even have something that has nothing to do with 9/11 like that, but they come here and make a video game about a bloodbath. It's a bloodbath, what happened in Fallujah. Again, they've still not even recovered. Go and look at the pictures of the children being born there. It's horrendous, man. I mean, it's not even like... They knew exactly what they're doing. Everyone knows what happened in Fallujah. There's no illusions there, right? What's next? They're going to make one about the My Lai massacre? I mean, like, what? Could you imagine if someone made a video game about Dien Bien Phu, which is in Vietnam, when the French, they were wiped out? Right? This is a very solemn date for the French, Dien Bien Phu. Could you imagine? They would fucking lose it. Like, I can assure you Macron would lose it. And yet he refuses to apologize for their colonial crimes, for their genocide in Algeria, right? He acknowledges that it took place, but won't apologize for it. You know, and this is, again, this Western mentality where it's okay for them to make movies about the violence that they've perpetuated, to glorify that in various mediums, be it, you know, books, movies, video games. But, you know, dare you not even do the same thing, but even remotely, indirectly make some kind of reference by accident. And like this movie, for example, that was going to come out, and it had a poster of someone jumping out of a building, nothing to do with it, and yet that caused it caused outrage. Right? Once again, you see this double standard. They try to whitewash their own crimes, and it's just disgusting. I mean, it's completely senseless. It really is. And even if you go and watch, for example, Once Upon a Time in Iraq, and I've said good things about this BBC documentary and also bad things that there are things that I've criticized about it. One of those things is, again, they talk about how the U.S. soldiers were like basically the victims of the war, right? They also obviously tell the side of the Iraqis, but they also let this journalist talk about how, again, this was in Fallujah, if I recall correctly, talk about how, one of the U.S. soldiers got killed just because he wanted to take a picture. And it's like, yeah, okay, it's kind of messed up that you caused his death indirectly, but you're an invading force. I mean, what were you doing there? And in a mosque, no less, right? They went up, they tried to storm a mosque and kill an insurgent. Again, as Noam Chomsky correctly points out here, what the fuck does that even mean? Someone who's resisting an illegal occupation is now an insurgent? You saw what they want. They want people to get on the floor and shackle them up. Even doctors, even patients. Fuck you. You get on the floor. It's just disgusting. That's what they do, right? And that's what the British did as well. And they've been at it for much longer. All right, let's not mince words. It's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. And again, my point here is that, yeah, I got nothing against video games, man. I've played my fair share, but this is fucking tasteless, to say the very least. What a whitewashing of history.